Business lesson 101. I think the biggest lesson that I've ever learned when it comes to just business in general is make sure that if you have a partner, you're evenly yoked. What do I mean by this? In business, it requires every ounce of you, every ounce of energy that you have, every ounce of concentration that you have, all of your mental capacity, all your physical fortitude, all your intestinal fortitude. It requires literally everything to be obsessed and focused on your goal. Why? Because, well, what's the purpose of a business? It's a revenue generator, sure. But the purpose of running a business is keeping a business running, right? So how do you keep something running that never existed? How do you create something out of your brain, let it manifest into the world that you live in and still be able to sleep and be able to balance your life and all those things? A lot of that takes recruiting the right people to be with you. Right? If you're not evenly yoked, you guys, whoever's watching this, you understand what evenly yoked means, I'm sure. It's not just something that's written in the Bible about who you're supposed to marry. It's about oxen. It's like you got the yoke on their back and they're driving, the till. If one of them's pushing harder than the other one, you're sideways. If one of them's not moving, they're pulling them, right? That's extra friction, that's extra pressure, that's extra power that's necessary. So they burn out and they get tired early, right? If there's something that I've learned from going into business, it's understand if the people you're recruiting are evenly yoked. And if you don't know that, don't hire anybody. Do it yourself until you find the right person. Well, it's either metal or wood or whatever, but it's this apparatus, right? So it looks like this. It's got two arcs and it comes together down on the bottom, right? Like this.
Oh, it's like a thing for killing.
Yeah, for animals or oxen or cows or whatever, right?
It looks kind of like it.
Right, so it goes over their shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Or over their neck and their shoulders. And then the till's behind, so you got them all harnessed in. Or whatever you're pulling, they might be just pulling a cart or whatever, right? Like so it's got them, it's harnessed behind, and obviously they're supposed to move at the same time. They're supposed to move at the same pace, right? If one of them is stronger or faster, it's tilling like this, right? And going sideways. You're not meeting your direction, right? If one of them stops altogether, this one can try to trudge forward, but eventually it's going to burn out. That's what I was talking about, right? So it's just a good visual on if you're going to be yoked with somebody, make sure it's even. So you could have, 2 horsepower, or you could have anti-horsepower, right? Like it's like working against itself. Yeah, one wheel going backwards, one wheel going forward. You just fucking spinning in circles, Well, all right. So evenly yoked, surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded. We talked about that. I'd say another big learning lesson. I think this is applicable to just about any business, so it doesn't have to be just like getting into roofing, is not putting the cart before the horse, right? Don't become bigger than your britches, grow low and slow. I don't know how many analogies I can use, but like build a hefty, sturdy fucking foundation, right? Like make sure it's strong before you start to build upward, because if you don't have that foundation and you start to, try to wing it, trust me, in business, you're under a microscope. You're not going to be able to wing it. So if we apply this to like roofing, so like there's certain things where I know that our business is better than, some of our competitors' business. There's technically like, 6,000 people who could pull a permit in the state of Colorado to do a roof, right? So 6,000 different roofers technically. It might be more, it might be less. That's probably old numbers. I don't know. But either way, that's a lot of people. It's a saturated market, right? But if you take that and you break them down into sums of people, you probably have like 5,500 of them, right, of the 6,000, if that's the accurate number. 5,500 of them are outsourcing everything. It's like two dudes, and all that they do is find an account. They find a person who needs the service. They contract that work, and they outsource literally everything. They outsource their labor, they outsource their invoicing, they outsource their insurance specialty work, they outsource their accounts receivable, they outsource any marketing that they do, they outsource everything. They have no employees, even themselves. They're probably even 1099 themselves, right? So what's great about that is they have zero risk, zero liability, right? The only liability they have is to serve, the other end of that contract. But theoretically, there's plenty of money here because most of it is insurance work. That's why there's a lot of people who do it, right? Money's going to be there because the insurance is paying for it. They just got to find the pieces to put together. In some ways, I'm a little bit envious of the way that they do it because that's actually how we started, right? We grew it low and slow. We didn't have any investment capital. We didn't have anybody who even believed in what we were doing. It was just me and my ex-business partner, right? And we had to bootstrap it into existence. We had to knock doors to find opportunities. We had to make calls to find ways to serve those opportunities. We had to make this from nothing into something. And so in some ways I'm envious because they almost have no risk associated with what they're doing. However, they don't have what we have in the other 500, or what is it? What numbers did I give you? 5,500. So 500, they're not like us because we have support staffs. We have people assigned to specifically every function and facet of the business so that we can not only execute at a better form and fashion, we can, maintain our quality. We can forecast what we're doing. We can actually run a steady business. But not only that, we can actually serve the client when something goes wrong, right? I talked in a bunch of old videos about warranties and how good a warranty is based off of how close they are and if you can walk into their business. That's what I'm talking about. There's a lot of people who can't even actually do warranty work because they don't have anybody on their team because they have no team. They have to go find somebody to contract this work out to. When they screw up, they got to find somebody else to fix the problem for them, right? So we've chosen a path, us in the 500 over here, we've chosen a path that costs more, it's more stressful, it includes more overhead costs, there's a lot more things that are, being focused on at all times. But us 500, opposed to the 5,500, are thinking long-term. We're thinking about expanding a brand. We're thinking about long-term relationships within our local networks or within the networks of the places that we put our units or whatever it is. We're thinking about not just that quick buck, right? If I was thinking about not just that quick buck, I wouldn't have ever hired anybody. I would have just got a license. I would have made a contract. I would have started selling stuff and I'd find a bunch of people to do all my stuff for me, right? Because once all their bills are paid, I make everything else. It's all gravy. I probably would have made quadruple the amount of money in the time that I've been investing into this if I would have stayed with this methodology. But this methodology doesn't last. This methodology has to depend on the seasons, right? They're not going to get retail work. They're not going to be able to do real work for real clients on large scale stuff because they aren't going to be able to support the work. They're not going to be able to pay a bond. They're not going to be able to have good insurance. They're not going to be able to support any of the things that they're trying to commit to do. And that's where a lot of people in the industry kind of cause a big disruption for the rest of us in the industry because they overcommit to certain things. The price looks great. Their eyes get crazy. They got those perked up ears. Somebody says yes to them and they have no way of actually satisfying that partnership that they just established or that contract that they just established. Those over here, the people who've invested time and attention into supporting a foundation, right? Creating a foundation, growing lower and slower, we can, right? Choose the right contractor is what I'm trying to say. But if there's a learning lesson that I could apply, it's that I would have rather spent more time doing very small business, growing a larger pot of money before I jumped into this because it has been stressful as fuck. Thicken up your skin. Sometimes it hurts. Don't take it personal. What do I mean by this? When you grow your own business, understand this. Even your family and friends are not going to support it till it's successful. I'm not talking smack on my own family. Everybody loves me. But they need to see my product become something stable and worthwhile before they're pumped about my product like I'm pumped about my product. You can't take it personal. You can't take it personal because if you're thin-skinned and you're a whiny little bitch, right, you're gonna give up because you feel like there's no support. Sometimes you're your only support. A lot of times you're your only support. You gotta thicken up your skin a little bit because guess what? You're under a microscope. Everybody thinks you better have your shit together from the moment you start business. But if you look at business in the long term, it's just like a human, right? It's like you start as a baby, and babies shit all over themselves. They can't even get up to take a dump, right? They can't do anything. You have to do it all for them, right? And they get molded, and they get taken care of, and they get protected, and eventually, you know, things start progressing, and they start doing other things. Eventually, you go from a baby to a toddler to, you know, just a little shithead kid. Like, I love kids, but they're kind of assholes, right? And they don't know any boundaries, and they make mistakes, and then they get reared back in. And in business, you kind of do the exact same thing. So as you're growing, right, as you're learning all this stuff, you have to understand where you are and where you want to be. And if you're not thick-skinned enough to deal with the fact that everybody's judging you because they think that you should be a mature adult in this, you know, evolution of business, you're never going to make it to that because you're sitting here whining and crying, and every time you make a mistake, you're not going to know how to acknowledge it and move on. So take accountability, thicken up your sin, be tough, and go back and grind. Learn from it, fall forward, move on. It's one of the things I've learned is that I probably should have spent more time bootstrapping and keeping things very small and confined until we had more money to apply to this idea. We've obviously done a great job, but it came at an expense of my sanity, an expense of my home life balance, you know, so on and so forth. But either way, another learning lesson in business is don't put your cart before the horse. Don't grow out of your boots too fast. I don't know what the right analogy is, but keep it low and slow. Stay dedicated. Check you later.